Okay, nice. So if you build the starter code that we download, it should just have a top heading that says shapes like that. I'm gonna, nice. So again, kind of just to link what we've done, we have our two lists, right? We have a list of headers that we want, and we have the list of shape objects. If we click on the shape objects and see what it actually contains, you'll see we just save the image name and we save whether it's selected. This is selected is going to be useful for the interaction stuff as we get to it later. Cool. So first step is adding the UI collection view. And just like last week, we're gonna make a new variable. Let collection view equal UI collection view. And then this would involve setting up constraints, but you can see we've conveniently provided that all for you here. So I can just uncomment these. I'm using command \, by the way, to uncomment multiple lines at a time. Again, very similar. It's constrained to the top, the bottom, the leading, and the trailing, except now it has a little bit of padding. We just gave it 12 points for space. And nice. So in this flow layout section, what we want to do is we want to define all of the things that are constant about the design, the layout of our collection view. So constant things would be like line spacing. Doesn't matter which cell it is, doesn't matter where it's scrolled, that'll stay constant. So to do that, we want to make a variable that's represents the flow layout. So our UI collection view flow layout property, which we will then give to the table view, the collection view, sorry. And in this layout, we want a few things. So the first of which is the minimum inter-item spacing, which we can set to a number, 10 up here, and our flow layout minimum line spacing, which I'm also going to set to 10. Just as a programming practice thing, which is when you're dealing with constants, such as setting these both to 10, it's always good to separate them out somewhere so that you can just edit them at the top of the file instead of having to go through and edit the same constant every time. So because I know that this is always going to be 10, up here you can see the to-do setup constants. I can have a let padding, like cell item padding, equal 10. And then instead of using 10 down here, I can just use that item padding. This will give me an error because it doesn't want a type of integer. It wants a type of CG float. Because this is layout stuff, we have to use CG floats instead of integers, which just stands for CG float, computer graphics floating point number. I can define it as a variable here. So I can just say this item padding is of type CG float. That's just another way to represent a number that deals with these layout stuff. So the other things we want on the layout is the scroll direction, right? These collection views can scroll vertically or they can scroll horizontally. The one we're using is vertical, so flow layout dot scroll direction equals dot vertical. And then the last constant thing is the section inset. So flow layout dot section inset. And again, you can see if I hover over this, this has a type of UI edge insets. So I'm going to have to set that equal to a UI edge inset, which I can use autocomplete to give me these nice placeholders. And again, I'm not going to just put numbers in because we want to separate those out into constants. So let's say let section padding be of type CG float, and I'll maybe make this like 5. And the top is going to be the section padding, left, so forth. Cool. And then lastly, we're going to add this to our collection view. But wait, I don't think that we can actually just directly add it. So maybe we can. But the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to make a new collection view. And this is something I want to use as an example of why optionals are useful, which is if I want to set this collection view equal to a new UI collection view, this time with a collection view flow layout. So I'm going to just say 0 frame because we have a constraint, and our collection flow layout is here. It's not going to let me because this is a let, right? So the way that I'm going to solve this is I'm going to make this a variable without a definition of type UI collection view and say that this exclamation point says it will for sure be there. Wait, what? Why is it not open? Okay, maybe it has to be a variable. Sorry, that's my mistake. If this were in an init function, this would work, but just because this is in the view did load, it doesn't. But anyways, we have this variable that says that this collection view will certainly be there, and then we can make it whenever we want, like making it in the view did load down here. So that sets up our collection view, and that is the to-do part for it. Nice. And then because we have our setup constraints, we're gonna add it to the view. So view.subview, view.add_subview, collection view, and every time we add a view, we have to set its translates auto resizing mask equals false. Cool. So this was step 1. We've added our collection view and we've set all the layout stuff that will be constant in the collection view. Yes.
It says field failed because class controller has no manipulator.
Yeah, I think that's so we have to change this to a var.
Oh,
That was my mistake. Every time you have sorry, man. But yes. So all variables have to have a value associated with them. And in this case, as I kind of mentioned, we're setting the value equal down here, but we're declaring that it exists up here. We could do this split if this was in an init function instead of the view did load function. So just we have it in the view did load. Cool. Does anyone have any other questions before we move on to part 2? So let is constant throughout your program. Var is changeable. So, or mutable is the correct word. So like here we have this equaling something. If I said like, let this equal like a UI collection view up here, I couldn't do this reassignment down here because I can't change it. Cool. So that's instantiating our collection view. The next part is creating our collection view cell and registering it. So this is very similar to creating a custom UI table view cell. This time we're just going to do a custom UI collection view cell. And we can do that again by right-clicking, pressing new file, making a Cocoa touch class. And instead of table view cell, it'll be collection view cell. I know it's really small. There's the name at the top and then the subclass of type. I'm going to put the class name, so custom item and subclass of UI collection view cell. So custom collection view cell of type UI collection view. There's no XIB file and the language is Swift. when we have our collection view cell. Okay, so in our collection view cell, for this demo, we have the images of the pictures. You can see those images are all in the assets over here, right? So the only thing we really need here is we need an image view. So I'm going to just say image view is a UI image view. And then in our init function, I think we did this last week as well. If I override init, super init, every time we override an init, we need to call it super. That's where we can add it to the collection view cell and constrain it and whatnot. Yes. So I just right clicked on this folder over here and I said new class. That works too? Thank you. So again, every time we have an init, we also get required to put this required here. But we don't use that, so you can just kind of ignore it. And then this is the same thing as our table view cells, right? In here, I'm gonna just say content view dot add subview, our image view, and then image view dot translates equal to false, and then I'm gonna make a function to set up constraints. So we have our setup constraints here, where I just made the constraints. So I'm gonna just make the constraint so that it's bounded to the contents view left, top, bottom, leading, and trailing, just so it's flush with the cell. So I can do the same thing. I can say image view dot top anchor dot constrain equal to self dot content view dot top anchor, and so forth with the leading. The trailing image view trailing anchor dot constrain equal to self dot content view dot trailing anchor, and image view dot bottom anchor constrain equal to self dot content view bottom anchor. And then this is a bug that we've actually commonly found last demo, which is that if you have this function here, a lot of times people forget to call it, right? So this exists, but this code doesn't actually run unless you call it in your init function or in your view did load. So just make sure to always put this setup constraints function call in here. Okay. And then just to kind of give a demo of styling stuff, I'm gonna make the image view look a little prettier by making it have a little round radius. So to do that, I'm gonna say image view layer corner radius, which I'm gonna set equal to like 5 probably. Yeah. And then every time we set a corner radius for it to actually show up, we have to clip it to the bounds to make sure that the radius gets drawn correctly. So layer dot clip. Nope, sorry, not layer. Image view clip to bounds equals true, just like that. Now we should get those nice like curved corners that we had earlier. And yes, cool. So this is our custom cell. And then just like with a table view, I'm gonna register it to the collection view. So I can say collection view dot register. We're gonna register the cell class for user identifier with our custom collection view cell dot, I think it's self for user identifier. And again, this is one of those things that we're going to end up reusing. So we want to make a new constant at the top. So I can say let cell reuse ID equal, and then any string we want, but I'm going to just say cell reuse ID. So this represents the string that we're gonna put here. Nice. So yes, exactly. You'll notice these are both like what we call scroll views. So they act very similarly. The only difference is that this is just a more like abstract and generalized version, right? Like I could build a table view using a smart collection view. I can't do the vice versa. Cool. So again, to get that functionality, we're gonna have to set the data source and delegate. Collection view data source equals self, and then delegate collection view dot delegate equals self. You'll notice here that I've only actually set the data source and the delegate. That flow layout is also like considered in this delegate as well. So just like last time, I'm going to do the extension thing, but you can see down here in our next few to-dos, we have the conforms to data source, conforms to the delegate, and then also it's technically called the delegate flow layout. So by assigning this delegate, we're assigning it to both the delegate flow layout and the delegate. And then just as before, we're getting these errors because we haven't actually said that this UI view controller is a data source. So I'm going to extend my view controller by saying it is also a type of UI collection view data source. And then all three of them. UI collection view delegate flow layout. Nice. Oh, I do have it swapped. Thank you for telling me that. It won't make a difference, but yes. Okay. Sorry, I just swapped the last two functions. So now they're in lines with the comments. Cool. Okay, so again, we're getting these errors because we have required functions. So I can just press the fix, and it'll give me the functions that it absolutely requires at all costs. So let's see. We have number of items in section, we have self for item, and I think those are the only two required ones. You'll notice that two of them that didn't pop up were number of sections and the view for header. Those aren't actually required. They have default values. The number of sections defaults to 1. So we'll add that. We'll just add that in. So number of sections, you can see I just type in num and we get this autocomplete. Number of sections. And then here, our number of sections is going to refer to this shapes list, the number of lists within this. So I can just say shapes.count. So this counts the number of lists within the top level list. And then per each list, to get the number of items, I'm going to count those inner lists. So here, return shapes. And then I actually have to index which section we want. So I'm going to say shapes, and then we can see we're given this variable section here, section.count. So this just gets the number of lists, and this gets the number of items in the corresponding list to that section. And then we have our self for item app. This works pretty much the same as it does in the table view self for item app. So the first step we do is, you can see we have a registered cell. We just want to dequeue that registered cell. So I can say, I just stop saying cell. It's item, not cell. So our item is going to be equal to the collection view dot DQ configured reusable cell. Nope, that's not it. DQ reusable cell with reuse identifier 4. So again, our reuse identifier, which we've saved up here conveniently in this constant, cell reuse ID. I'm just going to stick it in here. So reuse ID for index path, and then we're giving the index path. And then at the very end, we can return the item. So again, this DQ reusable cell will just give us a collection view cell, but because we registered our custom cell, we want to use our custom cell, we have to cast that as a custom cell as our custom collection view cell. And then because we have this optional, we can put the if let there and say if it doesn't work, we're gonna just return a UI collection view cell. This should all look pretty familiar from last week. It's yes, yes, pretty much. Um, So I think I'm just switching up the names in my head. So sorry if I keep like switching them up. I think the actual thing is here we have cell for item at. So when we think of these like sections, everything has a section and an item. In a table view, everything has a section and a row. And the cell is kind of that like cell that goes in that item or that row. So that's the actual terminology, but in my head, they kind of just mash as the same thing because they basically do the same thing. So sorry if I keep like using the wrong term. But that's the formal answer. Cool. So we've DQ'd. I need the return. So this should be outside the if statement. That way, if this doesn't work, then we just return an empty cell. If it does work, we can return our item. And then in here, I need to configure the item, right? Or I need to configure the cell. Let's start using the right term. Nice. Okay, so with our cell, just like we did last time, I can custom set the actual cell's properties, right? I can do cell.imageView.image, and don't copy this because we're not going to keep it for very long, equals UI image, and then put the actual string. Or I can just make a new function in the cell that is like an update function. The first step to doing that is actually getting the shape that we're corresponding with. Sorry, I didn't do this earlier, but I can say let this cell shape equal, and then we're getting it from this model, our shapes variable. And then to actually get the value, we use the index path, but this time we're going to be using the index paths section to get which section it is in. And then we're inside the section, we're going to get which item it's in. So index path item. So this gets the shape. And then again, instead of customly setting it, I'm going to make a new function in our custom cell that just takes in a shape and updates it. So in here, we're going to make a new function, update, and then shape of type shape. And then I can just say image view dot image equals a UI image named our shape dot image name. And that should set the shape up. Cool. So now I think if we run this, this should work. And if it doesn't work, then I'm sad. We didn't actually call the configure function. Yes. So we just made this new function update. Okay. So I forgot to actually update the cell, right? So cell dot, I forgot what I named it. Cell dot update, and then I can just input my shape here. But now, I hope it'll actually run. Fun. So this is our collection view at the moment. You can see it's all bunched up. It's all default images. This is the actual size of the image, like the image.png that we dragged in. But because like we didn't do the whole like flow layout thing, we haven't manually resized it and whatnot. It just defaults to the smallest shape possible. So the next thing that we're going to do is in this collection view, I'm going to make a new function that is the size function, right? So collection view size for item at. And if you just type in like size for, you'll see this collection view size for item at placeholder here, and it's expecting a CG size. So if I just kind of use the autofills to see CG size, these are the different ways I can build it. I can set a width and a height, right? So ultimately, we're going to want to return the CG size, but I need to insert a width and a height. For the purposes of this demo, we just have it being like the size of kind of the view's width in half. So I'm going to just say the length, because it's a square, is going to be equal to our views frames width, and then divided by 2. But just as like a special add-on, because we have these paddings, this item padding, I'm going to just subtract an item padding from that. So frame dot width minus the item padding over 2. And then I can put this length inside our width and our height, and it should resize to the shape that we want. Maybe minus 2 times the item padding. Nope, it's a different thing. So I'm gonna just put in a floating constant as a demonstration. I think the reason this isn't working is I have the width, I have minus the padding, but I don't have minus the inset. I think if I just add minus the inset, it should work. But which was defined as our section padding. I guess this is a good demonstration that if you have it be a certain size, it'll auto draw for you. I don't know why that's not okay. I'm gonna just subtract a random number and see if it works. Okay, there. So I might have just miscalculated the width, but if you get this right, if you get this like length parameter right, then we have our width accurately set to fit the screen. This will auto update for you. And then I guess if that was a good demonstration of what happens if you don't have it set correctly, it'll just relay out in a different way. Does anyone have any questions on that at the moment? Okay. If not,